Greetings, people. My name is Ira, and this is part two of Leaving the United States from Decision to Result. Part two. I'm going to talk a little bit in this part about how we decided exactly where we were going to move. But before I get there, two things. First of all, if you enjoy this video, please like it. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you think it would be helpful, please share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it as well. Second thing I want to say is that I want to emphasize a point that I made in part one, and that is that I think it's very important that when you make the decision to move from your country of birth or from the country in which you've lived for a substantial period of time, that that decision be a positive one, that you go forward to something rather than run away from something. We've made very, I'm looking at myself and I see I kind of need a shave, don't I? Well, you'll just have to deal with it. I'm sorry. So what I feel is that you come to this decision by making the decision based upon what you need in your life. We were looking at a particular climate. We had been living in the Northeast. We didn't want to experience any more harsh winters. We were Eurocentric. We had friends in England and in Europe. We wanted to be able to visit our friends in England and Europe. So we were going towards Europe rather than running away from the United States. And I think that's very important. If you're not positive about this move, it may not be the best move for you to make. Okay, now, in order to decide where we wanted to live, once we decided that we wanted to live in Europe, the first thing that, again, that we talked about or thought about was climate. And if you're interested in a summer that's not too brutal, and a winter that's very mild and doesn't include snow, then you're really talking about the Mediterranean. And if you're talking about the Mediterranean, you're talking about the southwestern Mediterranean rather than the eastern Mediterranean and places like Greece and Turkey that do have pretty heavy heat in the summertime. The internet has to be your friend. You have to learn how to use the internet. You have to ask specific questions. I didn't ask what's the climate like in the Algarve in Portugal, for instance. I asked what is the average daytime temperature in the Algarve in February, a specific question, and got a very specific answer when I asked it just a little while ago. 55.4 degrees Fahrenheit, the average daytime temperature in February in the Algarve. So it gives you an idea that's very specific and not general. And I think it's important to learn the internet that way because you do get paper publications like Travel and Leisure, like International Living, and they'll tell you in general what's going on, but the internet will give you very specific answers to very specific questions, and you should use it. So there are about 3 places that we felt would meet all of our requirements, and those were the Algarve in Portugal, the Costas, Costa del Sol, and others in Spain, and Languedoc-Roussillon, now Occitanie in the south of France. And we just decided to go from west to east. And we started in Portugal. We flew to Lisbon. We found Lisbon to be an interesting city. It was on the cusp of renewal. It was still kind of rough and ready. It hadn't gone through a complete transformation the way, say, Barcelona has. But there was potential there, but it wasn't quite where it needed to be. We enjoyed our stay there, and then we rented a Fiat Punto. A Fiat Punto is a car that's driven by about 6 mice under the hood, but it'll get you down the road. And we took the day-long drive from Lisbon down to the Algarve in Portugal, and that drive sort of had the effect of helping us make our decision because the interior of Portugal is not that pretty. It's monotonous. It's not interesting. There are interesting towns. It's just a way to get from here to there, and we didn't find it very inviting. And then, of course, you get to the ocean. And it's not the Mediterranean. The Algarve in Portugal is outside of the Mediterranean. It's outside of, and I've lost the name of it. What's the name of the British colony? It's outside of. You see, that's why I've decided not to edit, because if I edit, I have to start all over again. I'm not going to start all over again because I didn't remember the word Gibraltar. Okay, so it's outside Gibraltar, so it's on the Atlantic and not the Mediterranean, but it has a Mediterranean-style climate. We stayed in a boutique hotel. It was very nice. You could see the Mediterranean. You could see palm trees. There was an indoor pool. There was an outdoor pool. Uh, but that's part of it. We're not water people. We don't go to the beach. We're not swimmers. We can and do, but it's not important part of our lives. So that part of it wasn't neat. And when you turned around from the ocean and looked back inland, that part of it wasn't very neat either. So there wasn't a great deal of geography that we found compelling. Secondly, there were only really two kinds of houses that we saw to buy. One, at least in our price range, one was were in the towns, places like Faro and Capoeira, Lagos, um, and they were older and they needed work and they didn't have a lot of outside space. They weren't terribly inviting. The other possibility was a condo in a complex that was built around tennis courts or golf courses. A new build that was tennis or golf centric. And we aren't interested in tennis or golf, and we really weren't interested in new builds. And finally, Portuguese is a language from Mars. I mean, it's just there's no feel that it can be learned intuitively like French or Spanish might be from a common Latin root. It's unless you're Brazilian or unless you're Portuguese yourself, I don't know how you can possibly learn Portuguese. I know Kathy and I couldn't have. So given all that, given the fact that the geography wasn't that interesting, the language wasn't easy for us, and we didn't like the housing choices, we decided that Portugal was not interesting to us. We also decided, kind of for some of the same reasons, to skip the Costa del Sol and the newer costas in Spain. Again, we're not water centric. Again, many of those costas are built around golf courses or tennis courts or cricket, whatever they are, cricket greens. Um, uh, and when you go inland, it's red dirt. It's kind of scrubby. The interior cities are more interesting to us than the interior cities or the interior area of Portugal was. Madrid is an interesting city, and Toledo and places like that are interesting to us. But where we would have lived on the coast in the Costas just didn't have the right feel to us because we felt that they would be the same as the Algarve in Portugal. So we decided to go to the south of France, to Languedoc-Roussillon. And friends of ours in England said, well, don't just fly there. Fly to Paris. We'll meet you in Paris. We'll have a long weekend in Paris. And then you'll drive down through France and you'll get the feel of the country before you get to the Languedoc. So that's what we did. And we had a very nice time in Paris. And we drove down just half a day to Brive-la-Gaillarde, which is not really a tourist town. It's sort of a market town. It's a railroad junction in the middle of France. Some places to see, some places to shop, but a really nice boutique hotel and a really nice restaurant. La Truffe Noire, the black truffle. Kathy, to this day, says it's one of the 2 or 3 best meals she's ever eaten, perhaps because it was the first real gourmet meal that she ate in France, but she even kept the menu. To this day, she has the menu from La Truffe Noire from that dinner that she ate in 2003, I think. And then we head south and we drive down the turnpike, down the péage, down the Pay Road. And as we're entering Languedoc, we're coming close to Carcassonne. Carcassonne is a city that has preserved medieval ramparts and guard towers. It's a fairy tale looking city that sticks out when you're driving down the highway. And we decided to go on take the rest stop and take a look at the town, take a few pictures, and take a rest. And we get to the rest stop, and there's a party going on. There's dogs barking and kids yelling and parents with picnics and bread and wine, and it's just a party with this fairy tale castle in the background. That was interesting to me, and what was also interesting to me was the landscape. I'm from northern New Jersey, rolling hills, carefully tended cornfields separated by stone walls and tree lines. And here I'd been driving through carefully tended vineyards separated by stone walls and tree lines in rolling hills, and I felt very comfortable. And the more I got into the region, the more comfortable I felt. It wasn't quite the same with Kathy. It took her a little while a little longer to get completely comfortable here, but I got comfortable here very quickly. So we go to our hotel uh, in a little town between Narbonne and Béziers. And it should be pointed out that we lived in eastern Pennsylvania. We lived in a little small town north of Allentown and Bethlehem. And Allentown is a little bit bigger city, and it's a more commercial city. Bethlehem is a little bit smaller city, and it's got the Lehigh River going through it, and it's a walking city, and it's a historical city, and so it's more of a touristy city. And you've got, if you live in the Lehigh Valley, you've got New York an hour away, or hour and a half away. In one direction, you've got Philly an hour and a half away in the other direction. Well, here in the south of France, you have Perpignan to the southwest. You have Montpellier to the northeast. Now, they're not New York and Philadelphia, but they're big cities comparatively. The area that we were looking at, Narbonne and Béziers, very much like Allentown and Bethlehem. Béziers, a larger commercial city. Narbonne, a smaller, picturesque, more touristy city. And where we were looking were in the little small towns that surround Narbonne and Béziers, quite like we had been living for the past 30, 35 years before we came here, a little town to the north of Allentown and Bethlehem. So all of the environment felt very comfortable to us. And we go to this little hotel between Allentown and Bethlehem, between Narbonne and Béziers. And every day we go down to breakfast in the hotel, and there are two couples that are in the table next to us, and we get to talking to them. And it turns out that they are from Provence, and they are vacationing in the Languedoc. And so we asked them, Provence is the fairy tale of the south of France. Nice, Caen, Provence, it's where people think of when they think about the south of France. And here you are vacationing in the Languedoc. How come? And their answer was very simple. The Languedoc is less expensive, the Languedoc is less crowded, and the Languedoc is just as beautiful. So why not vacation there? And again, there's something else that added to our thoughts that this just might be the place. And so we had made appointments with real estate agents. Some of them were not very good. In fact, most of them didn't show us what we wanted, but we drove around and we enjoyed the driving. I pointed out the picnics in the French lay-bys. Well, the French will picnic anywhere. The French will stop a car when it's lunchtime and they get hungry, and they'll tailgate, and it doesn't make any difference where they are, what's going on, how close they are to the traffic. They'll stop and they'll have a picnic. Something else you need to be aware of if you're driving around France or rural France is that people will also pee wherever they are in the south of France. And so pretty much any time that you drive down a rural highway in France, a rural road in France, there's going to be some guy standing by a car relieving himself. And you just have to deal with, in the interest of full disclosure, if you can't stand that, then you probably shouldn't be here because you're going to see it at some point while you're driving around. Anyway, so we had seen houses that we thought might be close. We certainly saw a region that we thought would work for us. The language was easy enough to learn. I had taken it in school. We could take courses in night classes in the States without any problem and get the basics of the language. There's no question that the food and the wine and the cheese was going to be marvelous. So, and we did see houses that were pretty close. So, yeah, this looked like it might be it. And though we didn't find a house the first time, we decided, yes, we were going to come back and make a serious effort to find a place to buy here. We were going to start to learn the language. It did indeed look to us like the Languedoc in the south of France, now called Occitanie, was going to be the place that we would spend our active retirement years. And with that, I'm going to close, and we're going to talk a little bit more in our next installment about specifically how we bought a house here in the south of France. And it might take a little bit more than a week to get there. By the time you see this video, I will have had cataract surgery. And so I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to decide to do another video, no more than 2 weeks. But you should know, and thank you for your kind thoughts, but you should know that the healthcare in France is probably the best in the world. I think it's the best in the world in my limited experience. Both Kathy and I have had serious health problems while we've been here, and it's been wonderful. And each time we've had a serious health problem, the doctors involved said, well, do you want to go back to the United States to have this work done? And the answer was no. We're perfectly satisfied with having it done here. And everything about the experience, our experiences with French healthcare has been wonderful. And at some point, we'll talk about French healthcare as a topic as well. So if you enjoy this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. And if you think it would be fruitful, share it with a friend who might enjoy it as well. Thanks. Have a good one.